What's up, boxing fans? This is TBE Boxing back at you again. Today's topic: to be number one pound for pound, Errol Spence has to beat Terrence Crawford. Pay-per-view numbers do not do it. Let's chop it up and see what it's all about.
Got the money for minutes, pretty bitch, gotta show me titties. This is the life that I chose, huh? On the block with the pole, huh? This is the life that I chose, huh? On the block with the pole, huh? That life before riches, huh? That life before riches, huh? Pretty bitch, show me titties, huh? And I got the glaze, you run up on me, I'ma make you get it. I'ma make you get it.
Okay, boxing fans, let's talk some boxing today. All right, so I'm not sure if you guys have seen some of the so-called pound for pound lists that has been put out there by some of these YouTube channels, such as Champ Side. He put out a channel, not a channel, but a so-called quote unquote pound for pound list. I mean, these guys are something else. I mean, anyway, on his pound for pound list, he has Errol Spence as number one. So, I'm not even going to go over the rest of the list that who he has number two or number three. It doesn't make any sense. It's a ridiculous. I think he got Deontay Wilder as number two or whatever. Some ridiculous list that he came up with. This so-called YouTube channels on their pound for pound list. So he puts out a pound for pound list and he puts Errol Spence as number one on the list. Now, that's what I want to talk about. So we're going to go ahead and chop that up, okay? So we're going to see what is this list based on, and we're going to talk about, Terrence Crawford, number one pound for pound, because, most people might know that Terrence Crawford is basically almost universally rated as pound for pound number one fighter in the world by various boxing magazines, boxing experts, boxing professionals, trainers, boxers, and the like. I mean, it's not just some guy on YouTube coming up with his own pound for pound list, and this, which is basically, just some fanboy list. Okay, this is generally most of the so-called boxing experts, and boxing magazines, and so when you add them all up together, you will see that they have Terrence Crawford as number one pound for pound, generally speaking. Okay, some might have CARNE-LO as number one, or not, but most of them have Terrence Crawford as the number one pound for pound fighter in the world. Now we got to ask ourselves, well, why is that? Why do people have Terrence Crawford, generally speaking, as the number one pound for pound fighter in the world, and why does a guy like Champ Side, have Errol Spence has the pound for pound number one fighter in the world when Errol Spence is on nobody else's list as number one pound for pound fighter in the world, but these YouTube fanboy channels like Champ Side, Fan Boxing, Blue Blood Sports, and a couple other ones. Okay, so we're gonna talk about that. So, as I said, generally speaking, and almost universally, Terrence Crawford is the number one pound for pound fighter in the world as rated by various different boxing magazine personalities, professionals, trainers, and boxers. Okay, and that's based on his overall, record and accomplishment as a fighter, throughout his career. Now, this is how you judge a pound for pound fighter. I mean, basically, you go by his whole career, basically. So, in Terrence Crawford's career, he's a three-time, three-division champion, lightweight, junior welterweight, and welterweight. And what distinguished him as the pound for pound, what mostly distinguished him as the pound for pound champion, is the fact that he was, he is undisputed at junior welterweight, meaning that he collected all the belts, all the 4 belts at the welterweight level, junior welterweight level, super lightweight that is, and he was undisputed champion at junior welterweight, which is one level below welterweight. So this is probably the main accomplishment of Terrence Crawford that makes him the #1 pound for pound fighter in the world as rated by most boxing aficionados. Now, that let's be clear about that, because that's a rare thing. Not many people have been able to accomplish that. Floyd Mayweather didn't accomplish that. Manny Pacquiao didn't accomplish that. Oscar De La Hoya didn't accomplish that. No one has basically accomplished that recently. Okay, so this is why Terrence Crawford is rated as the #1 pound for pound fighter. That's one of the main reasons why. Okay, and the fact that he's been champion in 3 different divisions. I mean, lightweight unified champion, welterweight, junior welterweight undisputed champion, and now he's a welterweight champion. Currently a WBO champion in welterweight division, and probably would have been unified champion by now if he wasn't getting ducked by the likes of Keith Thurman when he had the belt. Currently, he's getting ducked by Errol Spence. Been ducking him for 3 years. Manny Pacquiao, they were supposed to fight. That fight never happened. So basically, if he would have been able to get the fights of the guys that have the belts at welterweight, he probably would have been unified champion by now and probably undisputed by now. Okay, so this is the reason why a lot of people rate him, pound for pound #1 fighter. And now some people might rate Canelo as the #1 pound for pound fighter, but the problem with Canelo is that a lot of people would rate him behind Crawford because of the fact that #1, he's never been undisputed, even though he's close to that now because he has, I think, 3 belts currently, or 2, I'm not sure. But he's, I think he's 1 belt away from becoming undisputed. Maybe 2. But the main thing about Canelo, why a lot of people don't rate him as #1 pound for pound ahead of Terrence Crawford, is the fact that he's been, basically convicted and suspended for PED use. That means, performance enhancing drugs. He's basically been suspended for that. Okay, and so a lot of people, don't rate him as pound for pound, #1 because of that. Okay, and basically I believe that's only right for them to do that, because if you are using, that's like a way of cheating. Okay, and so Terrence Crawford never been associated with anything like that. He's a fighter's fighter who lived boxing basically. Okay, no drinking, no smoking, and the whole 9 yards. So he has never been associated with performance enhancing drugs of any kind, not even remotely. And so people basically see him as the #1 pound for pound fighter in the world. Now, you have these guys on YouTube, okay, these fanboys like Champside and Fan and Boxing and a whole bunch of them. I can't name them all. There's a few more of them, okay. They're basically fanboys of Errol Spence, and they go around on YouTube, trying to belittle Terrence Crawford's accomplishment. I mean, at the end of the day, the reason for that is, I'm not even sure why most of them, are doing this, but I think it has a lot to do with the fact that Terrence Crawford doesn't really give these guys any interviews. They do interviews with various boxers, or the boxers give them promos, and so they can put on their channel, so they can, popularize their channels and, make super chat money and the whole 9 yards. So Terrence Crawford is really not a part of the whole scene, and he doesn't really associate with a lot of these guys because, they just go, on their channel and, basically spew narratives and run, but basically they tell lies. Let's put it like that. I mean, let's just be honest about it, okay? So that's basically what a lot of these guys do on their channels. And so they've been on their channels telling, making up stuff or running narrative, pushing their own personal preferences, as, you know, as basically the truth, so to speak. Okay. So basically, I guess a lot of these guys ask Terrence Crawford to come on the channel. He doesn't really do that. He's not really that type of guy. He doesn't really, go out there like that. He basically keeps to himself. He's a quiet type of guy. And so a lot of these guys resent him for that, okay, because he doesn't come on the channel so they can make super chat money off of him, okay. So this is why a lot of these guys are running these various narratives about Terrence Crawford. So now, and then some of these guys are getting paid behind the scenes from some of these boxers and some of the boxers team, to run their narrative to push a particular boxer. So this is what these guys are doing, payola. That's what they call it in the music business. So a lot of these guys, some of them are getting payola, okay? Some of them are getting paid directly by the boxers team, as we saw in the situation where Phantom Boxing, got paid $300 from Batman. Batman came on one of the YouTube channels and, exposed the fact that he had paid Phantom Boxing $3 million allegedly. I mean, I said 3 million. I wish $300 to push a narrative about Gary Russell Jr. Okay, so these type of things are going on, and they've been exposed. And not just Fannin, a couple other channels do the same thing. So here comes Champside now. Another one of those guys pushing narratives. Okay. False narratives, I should say. He comes out with a pound for pound list talking about Errol Spence is the #1 pound for pound fighter in the world. Nobody else has Errol Spence as #1 pound for pound fighter in the world, except for maybe him and Phantom Boxing and a couple of other these, like I said, fanboy YouTube boxing channels. Okay, and now, we could compare Phantom Boxing, we can compare Errol Spence record to Terrence Crawford record and see who is, the real pound for pound fighter. I mean, it's not even close. Okay, let's be clear. And so we're gonna do that, okay, because like I said, it's not even close. So as I described previously, Crawford was a 3-division champion. Lightweight, junior welterweight, and welterweight. Errol Spence, 1-division champion. Never went past welterweight. Okay, he's been welterweight since he started, and he's still welterweight now. Okay. Crawford was unified at lightweight, undisputed at welterweight. I mean, at junior welterweight. Errol Spence, unified at welterweight. That's it. Like I said, he never went up to 154 pounds, never went up to 160 pounds. He's basically been at 147 pound welterweight his whole career, basically. So that's the big difference right there. Who was, we can go into individual boxing. Like I said, we can go into individual boxing matches and who have they actually fought. And, Terrence Crawford, like I said, he has basically defeated 4 world champions at junior welterweight and more at lightweight, and also more at junior welterweight, as a matter of fact, because we're only talking about the ones that was reigning champions that he beat to become undisputed. Okay, but he has beaten other champions that weren't, reigning currently at junior welterweight. Okay, so he has fought myriads of different fighters at lightweight and at junior welterweight and at welterweight. As a matter of fact, he jumped from junior welterweight to welterweight and took on the champion Jeff Horn and beat him in the first fight, his first fight at welterweight. No, he didn't take any tune-up fight. He didn't go and get acclimated to the weight division. He just jumped straight from junior welterweight straight to welterweight and beat the reigning champion, the reigning WBO champion Jeff Horn. He did the same thing from lightweight to junior welterweight. Okay, he just jumped up and beat the champion at junior welterweight. As a matter of fact, I think his first junior welterweight fight while he was a lightweight, while he was campaigning at lightweight was, and this was before he was champion actually, it was Brady Prescott, who was supposed to fight the champion at the time, but something happened to the champion at junior welterweight, and so Brady Prescott needed someone else to fight because he was in training and he wanted to fight. So they asked Terrence Crawford, who was a lightweight at the time, if he would take the fight, and Terrence Crawford took the fight on 3 days' notice, jumped up to junior welterweight, and as a matter of fact, that was his first 10-round fight, and beat Brady Prescott. Okay, which was a pretty big accomplishment for a guy who was making his debut as a 10-round fighter. So these are the type of things that Terrence Crawford has accomplished, as a fighter throughout his career, in jumping to different weight divisions, fighting, top level opponents, okay? And at the same time, Errol Spence has, like I said, never done anything like that. He's been campaigning at the same weight division his whole career. So who was Errol Spence fought at welterweight for him to be so-called #1 pound for pound? Like I said, I mean, it's a ridiculous rating for anyone to rate Errol Spence is #1 pound for pound based on his accomplishment, because if you look at his accomplishments, okay, it hasn't been much. Okay, like I said, he has been one division champion. He's a unified champion. He beat Shawn Porter to get the second belt. He beat Kell Brook to become champion. Took the IBF title from Kell Brook. Okay, at the time, Kell Brook was coming off of a loss from Triple G Golovkin, where he had a broken eye socket, and he had jumped up to 160 pounds to fight Golovkin, and he lost that fight, got his eye socket broken, and then 9 months later he had to move down. Not only did he have to move down in less than 9 months to fight Errol Spence, and lose all that weight and muscle that he had gained to fight Triple G, but his eye socket had less than 9 months of time to heal. Okay, so we can see the difficulties there for Kell Brook, who was at the time arguably the #1 fighter at welterweight. So he fought Triple G, that is Kell Brook, got his eye socket broken, and then 9 months later he's fighting again against Errol Spence. And so he lost that fight against Errol Spence because Errol Spence broke his other eye socket, because as you can see, the eye socket didn't even get time to heal. The original eye socket that was broken didn't really have enough time to heal, so his other eye socket was also broken in that fight. So this is how Errol Spence became champion. Okay, and he fought a couple of fights after that, but his most noted fight at welterweight was against Mikey Garcia, who moved up from lightweight to fight him. Okay, some will say junior welterweight, because he had campaigned at junior welterweight for a couple of fights, or one fight before he fought at welterweight against Errol Spence. So basically, but Mikey Garcia is a lightweight, was basically a lightweight at the time. So he moved up to fight Errol Spence. So that's the fight. That was Errol Spence's first elite fighter, so to speak, as a welterweight, besides Kell Brook. Okay, his next fight was against Shawn Porter. Shawn Porter had 2 losses at the time. Okay, even though he was the WBC champion, a belt that he had taken from Danny Garcia. Okay, in a title match against Danny Garcia. He had won the belt from Garcia, and then he fought Errol Spence, and he lost it to Errol Spence. So, but as I said, Shawn Porter had 2 losses on his record, so he had been beaten by Keith Thurman and Kell Brook. He was undefeated when he fought Kell Brook, and Kell Brook beat him. So Kell Brook put the first loss on his record. Then he fought Keith Thurman and lost to Keith Thurman. Okay. And then he fought Errol Spence and lost to Errol Spence. So, you know, I guess you could say Errol Spence was fighting Keith Thurman and Kell Brook leftovers, if you want to put it in that. I mean, I wouldn't put it that way, but some people would. So basically, that's, you know, that's his second elite fighter at welterweight. Then he also fought Danny Garcia. Okay. Now, Danny Garcia had lost to both Shawn Porter and Keith Thurman. Okay. So he wasn't undefeated, and he had no title when he fought Errol Spence. Okay. So those are the 3 fighters: Mikey Garcia, Shawn Porter, and Danny Garcia, that Errol Spence fought at welterweight. And this is what people, you know, some people on YouTube are saying he's #1 pound for pound fighter because he fought those 3 guys. Okay. Now, I mean, nothing could be, I mean, that is so ridiculous, it's not even funny. I mean, how are you going to compare a record like that to a record where a guy is undisputed champion at junior welterweight? So, but a lot of people, you know, and not only is Crawford undisputed at junior welterweight, but he has knocked out everybody he has fought at welterweight. Like, I think his knockout record streak is now 8 or 9 knockouts straight. Okay, he's knocking everybody out he's fighting at welterweight. So this is why, again, he's rated pound for pound by most reputable, you know, boxing outlets, magazines, professionals, trainers, and boxers. Okay, but these little silly YouTube channels, you know, are trying to say that Errol Spence is #1 over Terrence Crawford. I mean, nothing could be further from the truth. And these guys need to just, you know, go somewhere with their ridiculous pound for pound list, because nobody's taking those lists seriously. Okay, and so there's no credence to any of that stuff that they're putting out there. It's all nonsense. It's bullshit. And any real boxing fan, boxing professional, boxing magazines, ESPN, all these different major outlets has Terrence Crawford as the #1 pound for pound fighter over Errol Spence. And Errol Spence is not even close. I think he's like 5th or 6th or 4th on that list. Okay, so it is what it is. But yet still, you have these fanboys like Champside and you know, Phantom Boxing pushing their narratives, you know, trying to say that Errol Spence is #1 pound for pound. I mean, it's not even close. Okay, and not only is Terrence Crawford, as a matter of fact, Terrence Crawford, while he was at junior welterweight, called out all the welterweight champions. He called out Keith Thurman. He called out Errol Spence. This was like 4 years ago. Okay, Errol Spence told him, "Oh, get a belt and come see me." So he jumped up to welterweight, beat Jeff Horn, and said, "Okay, I got the belt now. Let's get it on." Errol Spence ducked him, and has been ducking him consistently ever since. Okay, so this is another reason why he's #1 pound for pound fighter, because nobody wants to fight him. Okay, he's the most feared fighter at welterweight. That is Terrence Crawford. I call him the Iceman. Terrence Iceman Bud Crawford is the most feared fighter in the welterweight division. Nobody wants to fight him. Okay, Errol Spence has been making excuse after excuse, using all kind of tricks, every trick in the book, sending his trainer out to, you know, try to belittle Terrence Crawford's record, you know, his fanboys. I mean, they've done everything in their power to avoid fighting Terrence Crawford, and has been doing it for the past 3 years. Okay, so this is the guy people are trying to say is #1 pound for pound fighter. I don't buy it. I would never buy it. And you know, the only way that I see that Errol Spence could ever become #1 pound for pound fighter is if he beats Terrence Crawford. Okay, that's the only way. But because his accomplishment as a boxer is not even close to Terrence Crawford's accomplishment as a boxer. Okay, a lot of these guys, you know, try to separate Terrence Crawford's record at welterweight from his overall record as a boxer during his career. You can't really do that. Okay, you can't say, oh, Errol Spence fought better guys at welterweight and you know caught them. No, that doesn't make any sense. You have to go. A fighter is judged on the totality of his career, of his record. When you're doing pound for pound on any other list, you don't say what he's done in welterweight. There's no such thing. Okay? So, but this is what these guys, these are the kind of things they do in an attempt to try and say Errol Spence is you know, it has a better record than Terrence Crawford, which is total nonsense. His record compared to Terrence Crawford, Errol Spence's record compared to Terrence Crawford is not even close. It's a joke compared to what Terrence Crawford has accomplished in the ring. Okay? So fighting, you know, fighting Shawn Porter, who had 2 losses in his record, Daniel Garcia, who had 2 losses in his record, Mikey Garcia, who was a lightweight moving up. I mean, you can't use those as to say that he's accomplished more. I mean, it doesn't even make any sense. Only a total idiot would even try to compare Terrence Crawford's record to Errol Spence's record as a professional boxer. It's not close at all. And this is why Crawford is basically almost universally seen as the #1 pound for pound fighter in the world, even over a guy like Canelo. Okay? So these are the type of, you know, this is what we really have to understand. But, you know, a lot of these, you know, guys out there, YouTube channels pushing their ridiculous narrative, and then you have some of these casual fans that don't know anything about boxing, you know, believing that stuff, you know, and then the next thing they talk about is, oh, Errol Spence has more pay-per-views. I mean, who cares about pay-per-view? That doesn't, when they're rating your accomplishment as a boxer in the ring, nobody care about pay-per-view, who has the more pay-per-view fights, or who has the higher pay-per-view numbers, or who's the so-called pay-per-view star. I mean, and you know, what they call him pay-per-view star nowadays, I mean, Errol Spence highest pay-per-view numbers is maybe about 300,000 pay-per-views at the most, okay? Maybe 350, if that much, okay? That's the more than, and they try to inflate his numbers, okay? Now, pay-per-view stars are people making 1 million pay-per-views, 4 million, like how Mayweather used to do 4 million pay-per-views, okay? 2 million, 3 million, more than one time Mayweather had 4 million pay-per-views, consistently at over 1 million pay-per-view fights, okay? Those are pay-per-view numbers and those are pay-per-view stars. To claim that Errol Spence, who is barely making 300,000 pay-per-views, is a pay-per-view star is beyond ridiculous. It's silly, okay? But this is what these guys are resorting to, okay? Just to try and boost up Errol Spence and say, oh, he's this, he's that. I mean, it's ridiculous, okay? The reality of the situation is that in terms of boxing accomplishments, okay, Errol Spence's record is nowhere, is not even close to Terrence Crawford. And that's why Terrence Crawford is the #1 pound for pound fighter in the world. It's just that simple. And no amount of shenanigans and, you know, shucking and jiving and fake numbers and, you know, inflated pay-per-view numbers is going to change the fact, okay? These guys could come up with 1 million pound for pound list. It wouldn't make any difference to anyone, really, but themselves, okay? Real boxing people know who #1 pound for pound fighter is. They know it's Terrence Crawford, and they give no credence whatsoever to this ridiculous list that these guys are putting out and narrative that they're pushing about Errol Spence being, you know, ready to overturn Crawford. It's total nonsense, okay? And that it is what it is, okay? Now, you know, we can look at those numbers of pay-per-view that quote-unquote Errol Spence supposedly have. I mean, Bob Arum, you know, has consistently said that, you know, the numbers that Errol Spence is pushing that the people talking about these numbers as pay-per-view has been inflated, and he's saying that it's less than 200,000, 170,000 pay-per-views when people are out there saying it's 350 or whatever, or 300. And so we see that, Errol Spence, when he's asked about fighting Crawford, okay, and the last time someone asked him about that, he said something about, Bob Arum need to stop lying. This what he was referring to, because Bob Arum said that his pay-per-view numbers for his last fight was only 170,000 pay-per-views in the Danny Garcia fight. And so, it's for some reason he took offense to that and said that Bob Arum need to stop lying before they can sit down and talk about him fighting Terrence Crawford, which is another excuse for not wanting to fight Terrence Crawford. So these are the kind of excuses that Errol Spence is pulling out of his hat to try and say he don't want to fight Terrence Crawford. I mean, this guy comes with some creative excuses why he doesn't want to fight Crawford. He got all kind of excuses. He and his trainer, Derek James, Terrence Crawford don't sell, this, that, and the other. And the reality of the situation is that the biggest fight in boxing right now is Terrence Crawford versus Errol Spence, if that fight was ever to happen. But here it is, Errol Spence is trying to throw that fight under the bus, coming up with all kind of excuses why he don't want to fight Terrence Crawford. Talking about he wants 60-40, okay, or 70-30, or whatever he decided to give Terrence Crawford, okay? And, I mean, what is he basing that on? Inflated pay-per-view numbers, okay? And so that's the reality of what's going on, between Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford. I mean, I have nothing against Errol Spence. He's a good fighter. I can't take it away from him, okay? He's a good fighter, and if him and Terrence Crawford were to fight, we don't know who's going to win that fight, really. I mean, some people will say Terrence Crawford will win the fight. Some will say Errol Spence is going to win the fight. It might be a 50-50 fight. But based on what I've seen, I would think that Crawford would probably beat Errol Spence. But there's no guarantee of that, okay? In reality, that's just my take on it. That doesn't mean that's necessarily going to be the case, okay? So this is why people want to see this fight, to see who would actually win the fight, okay? Me included. I want to see the fight. But again, it doesn't seem that Errol Spence have enough confidence in himself, to take the fight, to see who is the better fighter, who would win the fight. He's doing everything in his power to duck Terrence Crawford. And it's to the point now where people like Tim Bradley, ESPN, Andre Ward, all these people out there now saying that Errol Spence is ducking Terrence Crawford. It's becoming so blatant that you can't not see that he's ducking. He's not even trying to hide it anymore. Okay? He just straight up and down, just ducking in plain sight. So, it is what it is. I call it shameless ducking. Okay? This is what's really going on. So, at the end of the day, these guys on YouTube coming out with their ridiculous pay-per-view, not pay-per-view, but pound-for-pound list, is just another facet of these narratives that they're pushing, trying to boost up Errol Spence, in light of the fact that the whole world is watching him duck Terrence Crawford, so they're trying to boost him up and trying to cover it up, okay, with their so-called pound-for-pound list. It's the silliest thing I've ever seen. I mean, these guys are reducing boxing to a laughing stock with these type of tactics and, things that and antics that they're pulling, these LDBC YouTube guys. I mean, it's ridiculous. Okay, so yeah, that's what's going on, between Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford. And so, like I said, in order for Errol Spence to be number one pound for pound, he'd have to actually beat Crawford in a fight, because his numbers, his record is not even close to Terrence Crawford and can't even compare in no way, shape, or form. And those are the facts. And, people can like it or they can lump it, but it is what it is. And that's what it is. Okay? So that's all I have for right now. I'm going to leave it there. This is TBE Boxing. I'm out.